The whole thing is to create chaos.
Oh, I just want some good news.
Oh my
Anybody's
God.
got any good news?
Well, it's deliberate. It's obviously deliberate.
Of course, it's a control.
Tell you to vote, 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 but if you don't have any good people to vote for, then
Who are you going to vote for?
Rhetorical. Everything is just.
And in the end,
We have no options anymore.
We have no options.
It seems like we have no
I'm
options.
going to vote for America now.
What the fuck is going on? Is a Fiji Mermaid sponsored special broadcast, your Canadian 2021 federal election political resource. On September 9th, 2021, I spoke with Green Party Victoria riding candidate Nick Loughton. Nick Loughton was born and raised in Victoria and is proud to now be running here for the Green Party. He has a degree in biomedical sciences from the University of Calgary and is a law student at the University of Victoria. In Calgary, he developed nanovaccines to treat advanced breast cancers. He values compassion, truth, and evidence-based decision-making. Thank you so much for joining me today, Nick. This is fantastic. I'd like to begin with a little bit about you.
Thanks so much for having me, Sabine. Appreciate it.
Yay! This is so important, getting people to get to know their candidates in their different respective ridings.
Absolutely.
You're pretty unique because you're actually an active law student at UVic right now as well.
I am.
And you also have your degree from Calgary in biomedical science.
Biomedical science, yeah.
Very cool. So that's a really neat combination, law and biomedical sciences. What is the sort of unifying feature of your academic background and, you know, your party politics and your involvement in the Green Party?
For sure. Well, thanks for having me on, Sabine, and it's awesome to be here. You know, I've basically just kept jumping to more and more urgent crises as my life has slowly unfolded over the last few years. You know, I have a real appreciation for evidence-based decision-making, and that's why I originally pursued medical research. I was a nanovaccine researcher for 4 years at the University of Calgary before I moved back to Victoria, where I was born and raised, and decided to work for the Green Party for a couple months in 2019 in the federal election campaign here in Victoria, the riding that I'm now running to represent. And following the conclusion of that, I decided to go and attend law school at UVic. Because again, you know, it's for us and for our generation, it's all about the pursuit of truth and justice. The fact that we have so many people in society today who are subject matter experts on issues ranging from climate action to housing and homelessness to drug addiction and the opioid overdose crisis to healthcare reform, who you know, are publishing so much fantastic literature, material, and research that we lack the political will and courage to be able to do. And so that's why I'm here in politics today, to give a voice for science, for evidence-based decision-making, and to be an advocate for justice. Because quite frankly, you know, you look at the situation in this country today, where there's action on social justice, on racism, on the fact that BIPOC folks, women, and LGBTQ2 plus people are experiencing disproportionate levels and increasing levels of hate crimes and discrimination, or that we have economic injustice with increasing income and wealth inequality, or that we have environmental injustice, again, with you know, increasing global emissions, in particular here in Canada, and global warming, the effects of the climate crisis raging all around us, especially this past summer. It's really is the moment for us to be sitting on our hands and waiting for the action to come to us. You know, we're part of a young generation that's really keyed in to a lot of these political issues, and that knows that the way to solve these issues is in fact to follow that evidence-based model, the way that those in front of us have already actually laid the path out. You know, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. For homelessness, we've got models like Finland. For drug decriminalization, we've got models like Portugal. For our healthcare system, we've got models like the Netherlands and Australia. And for climate action, we can look at other G7 countries like Germany and the UK that have done a decent job of cutting emissions relative to us, and smaller countries like Costa Rica, which are moving towards complete carbon neutrality In the next 10 years, when we need to be there in the next 20, it's going to take a massive investment from us, but it's our opportunity to seize this moment, to recognize that it's our generation that's going to be the ones that foot the bill in 2050 and 2060 if we fail to act on the climate, if we fail to act on affordability and healthcare. And the politicians that are in there right now, quite frankly, most of them aren't going to be the ones that have to deal with the consequences of their inaction. And so it's time that we really fought for representation for the people here in Victoria. We fought for real action on the climate, on affordability, on healthcare, and on social and racial justice. And that's why I'm running for the Green Party. Having that evidence-based background, that justice-based background really just helps me lean into those values of mine that are really key. But at the end of the day, it's about moving towards this area where we have that urgent need for action. There's no time left to waste. There's no time left for you or I to sit here and say, well, in 20 or 30 years, our generation will be the ones that are the older ones that will take over Parliament. We need that representation now. We need it today.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Nick. Thank you. That's a brilliant overview of your connection to and why you're running, as the Victoria Regional Rep of, the Green Party of Canada. So thank you for that.
Mhm.
Now, we all know that the Green Party platform can be accessed online, and everyone can learn more about the federal candidate, Annamie Paul. But would you like to give our listeners, for ease of access, a good lowdown of maybe your top aspects of what the platform is?
Yes, our platform really falls into three pillars. We're fighting for a green future, for a life for all with dignity, and for a just society. I'll start at that first one there. This is really central to the ethos of the Green Party. A green future is one where we actually cut our emissions 60% by 2030, net zero by 2040, where we not only fulfill our international obligations as a country here in Canada, moving from a laggard, the country with the worst record on emissions in the G7, to a leader, which we know we can be and we know we want to be. Canadians want climate champions in our parliament. And Canadians want to be recognized as world leaders on these issues because we want to be seen as a leader on the world stage and a world power. And at the end of the day, that's going to require leadership on the part of our government. It's going to require political will and courage to make it happen. We're going to need to do a massive amount of investment in our transportation, in our energy, and in our buildings. We need to make all of our buildings more energy efficient, move them towards carbon neutrality. We need to change the model of transportation in our country, both electrifying transit, increasing mass transit and rapid transit, but also reducing barriers to folks that require them to have to transit long distances at all, right? We shouldn't have folks living out in suburbs that have to drive massive distances just to be able to go to a grocery store, just to be able to access the basic services that they need. If we build denser and more vibrant communities, and again, part of that's addressed through buildings, then we can be able to create actually a more energy efficient and a more vibrant way of living. That's not just going to benefit our environment, it's going to benefit us culturally as well. And we need to be able to recognize that, despite the fact that all of us, for the most part, stopped driving our personal vehicles in March of last year, emissions based on the transportation alone only fell by 8%. This is not just a you and me problem. This is a systemic and an industrial problem. And we need to not just have carrots for those big businesses to be cutting their emissions, but we also need to bring in some sticks, some actual deadlines and some requirements that all of these companies do transition over to an environmentally and socially responsible form of governance, because quite frankly, without that, we have no hope of hitting our 2030, 2040, and 2050 climate goals. For other two parts of our platform, we're talking about life with dignity. What do we think all people deserve as human rights? For me, that's a decent job with a living wage. That's quality education. That's comprehensive head-to-toe, cradle-to-grave, universal healthcare. That's security in unemployment, retirement, sickness, and disability. That's safe, secure, and affordable housing, and a clean environment. Those are the things that we need to be guaranteeing to everyone as rights, not just privileges for the wealthy few who can figure out a way to afford it, right? The policies that come with that, that's part of what we've been talking about for years. Guaranteed livable income, basic income as a part of that. Actually building affordable housing, raising the wages of folks that have been stagnant for so long. I mean, in the city of Victoria, it's $1,700 a month for a 1-bed apartment. And UVic students know that that's ridiculous, right? That you have to make $68K a year in order for that unit to be affordable. It's not just that the housing is unaffordable, right? It's not that we don't have enough affordable housing, it's that the wages are too low. I'm the only candidate from any of the major parties on the South Island that's talking about this, that the wages are too low, not just the minimum wage, not just the median wage, is right up the scale. We've been robbed of productivity for so long in this country, and it's time that we reverse course on that. Our federal government can lead by changing the way that federally regulated employees are compensated to make sure that we actually are being paid the fair value for our work. Moving on towards our just society. I mean, this is where we get into really the meat of our social and economic justice, right? We have to be able to address meaningful reconciliation, both truth from our past, present, and future, and reconciliation through the 94 calls to action of the TRC. I'm speaking to you today from the territory, the traditional unceded territory of the Lekwungen speaking peoples, known as the Songhees and Esquimalt First Nations, whose connection with this land continues to this day. I was born and raised here. I've lived here my whole life. The way that we have lost our connection to the people and to this land, to the way that we are supposed to treat every single human being with love, with compassion, and with dignity. What makes us all human, what gives us all that sense of humanity, has been so stripped and so removed from our culture, from our values, from our collective self-interest for so long in pursuit of economic goals or individual aspirations compared to our societal well-being. I mean, whether it's, economic inequalities, gender pay gaps, racial pay gaps based on disability or based on sexual and gender identity, everywhere you look and you want to talk about discrimination, there's always an economic component attached to that as well. And it's so important for us that when we look at how we address meaningful reconciliation with Indigenous peoples, how we address the way that we've treated BIPOC folks in the past, women, LGBTQ2S plus folks, people with disabilities, that we not only address the issues facing those communities on a social level, but how we build social cohesion and how we restore faith and confidence in those communities that they're part of a society that values people for their humanity, but also recognize that what we've done for so long is use the power of our economy to keep those people down. And you know what? Everything that we're proposing on the economic front, whether it's a decent job with a living wage or affordable housing or healthcare or an education, is going to disproportionately benefit those who have been disproportionately impacted by oppression in the past. So it's so important that we implement those 94 calls to action from the TRC. It's so important that we address racism, homophobia, bigotry in all forms, Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, discrimination against people with disabilities, homophobia, transphobia. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. I mean, sexism as well. But at the end of the day, it's more than just fighting for recognition that we're all human and we all can have love and compassion for each other, and that we are uplifting voices that aren't present in our parliament, in our system, and in our economy. We're also addressing those deep inequalities that have been pervasive for so long in society.
Yeah, thank you. That was fantastic. That was a brilliant overview of the Green platform and just covering the core pieces. I want to thank you so much for chatting with me today and just giving us the lowdown and sharing more about yourself. And in closing, being a student yourself, probably you would have some great advice that you could share with fellow student voters, ones that have voted for the first time or will be voting for the first time this year, or ones that are not.
Sure. Well, I'll break this down into two pieces of advice. First one, advice for students. Go to class, sit in the front row, do your readings, all that kind of stuff. Make sure you go to parties. Make sure you have fun with your friends on the weekends, sometimes on a Thursday. Take a break, go easy on yourself. The school year is just starting up. Make sure you have some fun. I was out at Felicitas last night, having a couple drinks with some friends and chatting with some voters, and passing out my cards and all this stuff, because I'm in full campaign mode now, and I can't disconnect that from my life, and I probably won't be able to for the next 9 days, and that's all right. But make sure that you really carve out a great work-life balance, a great study and life balance, and establish that early on. I've had it swing both ways, where I've had too much time studying and not enough time partying, and too much time partying and not enough time studying. And you know what? Your grades suffer both ways when you do that. If you don't get out enough, you're not going to do well in school. So make sure you do both those things. As far as advice for voters goes, yeah, check out the platforms of the parties. But at the end of the day, check out their records. Look at the action of what people have actually done. The Liberals, the NDP, the Greens will say a lot of the same things on progressive issues. I mean, I think most of the students that I know that'll be listening to this, if they're even thinking about voting for the Green Party, will know that, the Conservatives under Harper were disastrous for both our economy and for social and environmental justice in our society. But the Liberals have been promising us now 6 years all this kind of action, and in their platform, they're going to talk again about pharmacare and childcare and mental health care. And at the end of the day, their record speaks far louder than the words they write on pretty pieces of paper. Check the action that people have done. Check out the fact that when we proposed environmental legislation in the last parliament, that green amendments to bills were consistently shot down because the government, backed by the Liberals and the NDP, didn't want to set ambitious enough climate targets to actually meet our Paris Agreement obligations. Check the fact that the NDP in British Columbia continue to support LNG fracking. They continue to support logging at Fairy Creek. They continue to support Coastal GasLink in their battle against the Wet'suwet'en in northern BC. And check that same NDP in Alberta continues to support the oil and gas industry, and they both continue to subsidize the destruction of our planet and an existential threat to humanity as we know it. I mean, do your homework, do your research. Everyone watching this is smart enough to know that you can read the platforms, but make sure you check the actual records, the action of what these people have done. The Greens are the ones that are fighting for you on the climate, on healthcare, on affordability, on tuition reform. The Greens are the ones that are fighting for you on social justice, on racial justice. I'm really proud to run for the party with the first Black Jewish woman ever to lead a major political party in this country. I'm really proud to call Annemie Paul one of my friends. It's so much more than just being able to say that you stand for the right things. So much more than just being able to have pretty words come out of your mouth. You got to be able to look at what people are actually committing to doing, what people are actually saying when you ask them the tough questions and when their votes matter in the House of Commons. So check on that. Check the record, check on action, and vote on what people do, not on what they say, because actions speak louder than words.
Thank you so much, Nick. This has been wonderful.
Thank you so much, Sabine. I
look
appreciate
forward
it.
to seeing you on Monday.
Love the color of your hair wrap.
Oh,
I'm gonna
thanks.
take that as an endorsement of me.
Oh, right.
Absolutely. It's green, so it has to be. Great to see you endorsing the Green Party. I endorse the Green Party as well, despite the fact that my shirt today is a little bit bluer. I'm just super thrilled to be able to connect with as many students as I can, as many people as I can, and it's a really short election. It's a weird one during a pandemic. Events are smaller. People are less interested in engaging. No one really wants a pandemic election. But at the end of the day, it's our responsibility to elect someone who's going to have a real voice for Victoria and going to fight for action and not just, empty words and broken promises and telling us why we can't get things done in Parliament. Someone who's going to sit at the table and fight hard and not leave until the job is done. And that's what you get when you vote for Greens. And that's why I'm urging you to vote for me, vote for Nick Loughton to be your next MP from Victoria. Thanks so much for having me on, Sabine.
Thank you, Nick, for chatting with me. It was wonderful to hear your perspectives on the Green Party and just to get to know you a bit more. Good luck with the election. What the Beep is conducted on the unceded Coast Salish territory of the Lekwungen and Wasanich nations.